Brandon Brands.
Hey, what's up, everyone? It's brandsgrowthlive.com coming to you on Facebook, on YouTube, on Instagram today, if everything's working well. And what we're doing on this show is answering your questions about marketing. And that could be anything: marketing your personal brand, marketing your business. I want to help you figure out what it is that's going to move you forward and grow that business. And who am I? I'm Brandon Birkmeyer. If you haven't met me, if this is your first time watching, I am a marketing professional. I've been doing it for 17 plus years now, worked at ad agencies and on some of the biggest accounts out there: Walmart, Coca-Cola, and Apple, et cetera, et cetera. And about a year and a half ago, went solo and decided to bring what I can out there to help entrepreneurs just like you and creators and business owners. And today we've got an awesome topic for you. We're going to be talking about how do you promote your podcast on social media. So for all you podcasters out there that are trying to figure out how do you grow an audience, how do you promote, what are some tips and tricks and tactics to get your voice heard and get more listeners and more downloads, more subscriptions to that podcast, today's the episode for you. And without any further ado, I will roll the credits and we'll jump into it. Here we go.
Brandon Brands.
All right, all right. So again, our guest today is Amy Carlson. She's the host of the Toxin Terminator podcast, and I'll bring her on to tell you all about it. But her question again: how to grow your podcast with social media, and we'll ask her why this question is important to her. I think I can figure that out, but let's let her tell us herself. And without any further ado, let's go ahead and bring her out. Bring her out. Amy, what's up? What's up? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Thanks, Brandon. I'm so glad to be here.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sending your question in. Thanks for being a part of the community. I know you've joined the brand growth community online. If anyone out there wants to join it, it's brandonbrands.com/FB. That'll take you to the Facebook group. But this is what's the fun part. We can talk about like what we're really doing with our businesses, with our brands, and solve some of our problems, some of the things that we run up against that as a community we can figure out. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about, first off, your business, a little about yourself and this podcast and how it got, like, why this podcast?
Absolutely. So I have been an entrepreneur for the past 30 some years. I own franchise businesses here in the state of Iowa. And about 5 years ago, I was really turning that over to my son. And I'm not a retiring kind of person. So I got introduced to a company that really opened up my eyes to overall health and wellness. And I've spent the last 5 years learning all about health and wellness and about toxins and hidden toxins specifically in our home, thus the Toxin Terminator. I created the podcast because I wanted a vehicle to get this message out to more people. The numbers of chronic disease are staggering. 6 out of 10 people have a chronic disease. And out of those 6, 4 of them have more than one, multiple chronic diseases. And chronic disease is highly preventable. It's reversible. And I want to be able to spread that good news out to everybody and make sure they know.
I love it when there is some heart, some purpose behind the work that you're doing. You know, I feel like in marketing, we don't save a lot of lives, but if I can help people that are doing bigger things and more interesting things, then I feel like I've contributed as well. So I love having people like you on that we can work together to maybe bring some positivity into the world. So I love that. So our first question, let's get into the fun stuff here. Is how do you grow your podcast with social media? And we'll have some 2 other questions for the end of the show, some quick hitters, but this one is the one we'll dive into deep today. And so let's talk about this. So you've launched this podcast. First off, how long ago did you launch this?
I launched on August 5th.
Right. So about a month, exactly almost a month ago.
Yeah.
And the question, how do you grow your podcast with social media? Why is this top of mind for you right now? What are some of the things you've already thought about? Because a lot of us have a little bit of the answers in our head already.
Okay, great. Um, I feel like social media might be one of the first steps in growing the podcast. I'm brand spanking new to all of this and trying to learn. It just seems like social media is more of a community and where a lot of people are. And I think a lot of my target audience is going to be hanging out on social media. So it's just creating that community around that. It's kind of you can hit the masses all at once.
I'm guessing you already have some ideas on what to do on social media. What are some of the things you've thought of?
Well, I have my ideas, but I don't know how well they're working yet. One of my ideas was to create a page that's specifically for my listeners on the podcast. So that is for them, and everything we discuss is toxin related. It could be toxin products, toxin, things we put on our body, in our body. It could be mentally, relationships. Toxins can go all over the board, but that's where we focus the talk on. I also have that tied into my Instagram page, which is 100% all about the Toxin Terminator.
Right. Awesome. And in creating communities like that, you have to promote those communities as well, right? So getting people to fill those communities is also part of the task, right?
Yes.
Like it's not always just build it and they will come, right?
Well, and that's what I'm discovering now is I have a team behind me in what I do. So I kind of got a little bit of following based on the people that I already know. But, I don't want to wait to organically let this grow. I want to learn what are some tips that I can have because I think it's an important message.
Right. So I love it. So I figured I'd mention the obvious things first, which to get those out of the way, because everyone in their head likes to start to answering the questions, And the first thing, obviously, is how do you promote it on social media? Well, you post it on social media, right? That's the first one. Is you figure out your posting schedule. What do you want to say about it? How often do you want to say it? And then you just key on what's the most interesting thing you can say to get people's attention in terms of
Right.
posting, right? So, but that's what people already think of. Like, I already know that I need to post when my episodes come out. I actually am unique in that I only post about the episodes that are the interviews. I don't even post about my other episodes, my Wednesday and my Friday solo episodes, because for me, that's too much of a time commitment. So I'm just going to focus on the big hitter episodes. And then in the episode, I promote the other ones. But that's just me. But everyone's doing that. Everyone's, if they have a podcast, you're seeing their posts on Facebook, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, wherever they tend to be active, on Twitter. So that's normal. So that's not even part of the answer, but that's obviously something that everyone should be doing out there. So I'm going to get into a little bit more of the, I'd say, creative answers, if you will, and kind of dive deep into it. So I'll bring you off here for a second, bring up the slides. And we will talk again how to grow your podcast with social media. So let me dive into the first answer here. So the first thing is, that's the promo slide. Let me go down here. Here we go. Request reviews. Okay. So how to grow your podcast with social media, request reviews. And this is it's obviously not just in social media, but the first thing that all of us have to do when we're launching, you're 4 weeks in, you have 6 to 7, 8 weeks. I think sometimes it caps at 6 for iTunes to look at your podcast and say, oh, this is worthy of being promoted into the new and noteworthy section of iTunes. So you have a very limited window to get their attention. And the way to get their attention is subscriptions, star ratings, and written reviews. And what I think people miss is how you need to pace that as quickly as possible so that it projects that out and says, oh, this is going to shoot off to the top. Unfortunately, you're already 4 weeks in, and I looked at the reviews. It's under 20 right now. And that's what I would focus on first, is getting everyone to leave a review and coaching them and say, you need to leave a written review for this podcast today. Actually, I take that back. Pick a day. Say on Monday or Thursday or whatever it is, pick one day that's coming up soon. get everyone on board to support you and say, I will leave a rating for you and review for you on this day. And then on that, when that day comes, you say, go, go, go. And everyone does it. Because that way, suddenly iTunes sees 40 reviews come in at the same time. And it's thinking, oh gosh, that means I guess every day there's going to be 40 reviews coming. And I'm not saying that you're trying to trick the system, but you got to give yourself the advantage of being in iTunes new and noteworthy, especially when you're in a niche. So, within the health section, you will be showing up when people are looking for health podcasts and the other couple categories that you may have selected. And that's the most important thing from the beginning. And I'll bring you back on to tell you why, but I wanted to just kind of get those thoughts out there first, and then we could talk about it a little bit. So let me unmute you here and talk about it. How's it been going with requesting reviews? I know it's not the easiest thing to get people to leave reviews. That's one I'm challenged as well with that same thing.
It is hard. And so my question for you is, since I can be a product-driven podcast, would it be beneficial to offer some sort of a giveaway on my social media for those people who go in and leave a review? I'm asking them to do something for me. Do I want to do something for them in return?
Gotcha. Well, yeah, and that's the key is people do that. People give out like $5 gift cards all the time. That's one way to do it. For me, what I want to do is make sure that I reach humanly reach out to every person I know and let them know how important it is for me that they support me I call it a launch, because then people are like, oh, instead of just saying I can do it over time at some point and then they never do it, they're like, oh, I have to do it this day to help with the launch or whatever it is. And literally I'm texting my friends and my family, like person by person, sending emails to everyone I know, person by person. I'm going into the groups that I'm involved in and active in online, and I'm one by one, not just posting on social media, but I'm direct messaging everyone in the group saying, hey, do you think you can help me? And maybe have a family member, like, well, if you can count on you for 2 or 3 reviews, that would be awesome. And I get as many people to commit as possible, because you know what happens? No one actually moves on it. Like, I had people that like get this that are like, so I'm like, obviously we're in one of the communities together. It's for networking, and the people in that group supported me more than even some of my best friends did, because they get it. Like, they're like, this is important to him. This is something he's doing. Whereas our friends are like, yeah, I'll show up to like help you when you have a doctor's appointment or your kid has a birthday, but they're not living in this world where they think podcasts are important or that they're big in our world right now. So for them, they're like, oh, I'll do it. So I literally, when I see them, have to grab their phones and do it for them, because sometimes they don't know what to write. So like literally every chance you get as many as you can, as fast as you can. That's the first thing. And I'll tell you what, it might seem daunting, but for your category especially, it might only take you a very quick 20 to 30 reviews in one day or across 1 to 2 days to pop up into new and noteworthy. That's really all it takes. And make sure that they hit subscribe and leave a 5-star rating and write a review. A lot of people do one or the other, but not all 3. And if you need to coach them on how to do that, or send a video or whatever it is, because sometimes it's hard to find, have them do that. iTunes is all that matters right now in terms of that kind of rating. And that's what I would focus on. That's what I know it's like people are like, that's not social media. Well, it is. Like, I'm going into social media, I'm posting it everywhere, but I'm also direct messaging one by one Facebook Messenger notes where people actually see it. Because if you just post on social media, the unfortunate thing is only 3% of people on average, 3 to 6%, actually are shown your posts.
Right.
So even if you have 2,000 followers, only like 3 to 6% of them are going to be even shown your post, let alone take action. But a direct message, every single one of them will get that and think of it as a personal message and want to respond to it.
Right.
So I go through, top to bottom, the people that I know will actually take action, and I shoot them a message.
Great tip. Thank you, Brandon.
Yeah. And I want to talk about the value of that, because it's not like because you're suddenly new noteworthy, you're going to have hundreds of followers and subscriptions that flow in, but it helps. It definitely gives you more discovery than you have. It's also something when you're trying to secure new guests that you can use as a tool to say, hey, this podcast is doing well. I've had these guests, but also I was featured in New and Noteworthy for this section. And it just adds one more area of credibility and social proof to what you're trying to build, which at the end of the day separates you from some other podcast that might be reaching out to a guest for an interview. So
Right, right.
hugely valuable for me. So I think it would be for you too.
And anytime that you can provide that social proof of one way or the other, that's phenomenal. Thank you.
Yeah. And Brent Duheim is checking in saying, great advice, B. Amy, you've got a powerful message and it's great that you are taking it to social media. So thanks, Brent.
Thank you, Brent.
A couple of people are watching here. Gemma's watching. Ross is watching. Thanks, Ross. Always good to have some friends supporting us.
Yes.
So that's the first thing. And I'll leave that at that. And I'll jump into the second one here and we can move into it. The second is to find people that care. Now, this might seem like a funny thing to say, but again, this is a hard thing to ask people to do, to subscribe to a podcast, to watch, to listen to a podcast, to take action and be involved. So when I'm trying to promote my podcast on social media, I actually have to go to the places that are more specific. So yeah, I mentioned direct messages, that's one place. But one of the places that I like to tap into more specifically are groups and communities online that I'm active in, things that are related to my field. So I'll find all the marketing groups and all the entrepreneurship groups and all the podcasting groups of people that are looking to support each other and be a part of a community, and hopefully that are taking the knowledge and sharing the knowledge that I want to share. So that might for a podcast like yours be the health communities, but it could just be not just the people that might need help, but the people that also give help. So other people that teach within this space of living healthier lives and finding other alternative solutions to it, doctors or whatever it is, other people in the health space that are leaders might also support your podcast because they are looking for new ideas and they're looking for other voices in the community. So I go into their communities, things that they've built, and I say, okay, who are the people that care about this topic, top to bottom, and how do I involve myself in those spaces? And I've talked about this before as like basically getting credibility and getting attention through association. So for me, if I bring on a guest that has a large following and is a leader in the marketing space, some of their followers are going to show up on my podcast. If I go on social media and I'm involved in that person's community of the guests that I bring on, then they're getting to know me as well. And now they don't only just support my guests, they also support me. So I look for their Facebook communities. If they have a course or they have something you have to pay to get into, sometimes I pay to get into it, just to be a part of a community. If it's close enough to what I'm trying to do, that our stars align and that our people are the same people. And there are a lot of free communities out there that are just people who are looking to share answers, like a lot of mom groups, a lot of health groups, a lot of all these different things that people are just talking about their things. Being someone who shows up, who's involved, who answers questions, that doesn't say, listen to my podcast, listen to my podcast, listen to my podcast, but is saying, oh, that's a great question. Here's my answer. That's a great question. Here's what I did. That's a great question. Here's a resource. Here's someone that I know talks about that. And by the way, I did an episode on that. Here's a link. Lead with value first, which people will say all the time, but that's actually what you do. You go into the communities, you lead with value, you find the people that care and you help them. And that might mean one-on-one. That might mean that you actually reach out, do direct messages, set up a call, and you just have conversations with people. And those one or two people you affect per day, per week, will start to share your message with others because you've affected them and you've been involved in their life. So find people that care is that next one. And Amy, I'll bring you back on here. I know that that's probably easy for you to like want to, you have a lot of people that care in this community. I'm sure this is such a topic that hits people home. It like actually helps them with something. So what kind of communities are you involved with right now?
Sure. I am involved in obviously some networking communities. That's how you and I met. But I'm also involved because I'm 50 plus, so I'm involved with a lot of women's groups of women who are the same age that I am, have a lot of the same things that we're going through. I'm involved in some different exercise groups. I'm involved in some different health groups as well. So lots of interest around my topic.
Yeah. So for me, it's making sure that those people uh, are starting to become more aware that you're doing this, that this
Right.
thing is happening, and that you're not just saying I have a show. You're actually talking about like the really interesting things that are happening in the show. Like you call out a certain topic, you kind of leave it intriguing in some way, and that message might spur some curiosity in these groups. So instead of saying today's, you know, today's episode is about gut health with, Unique Hammond, which I know was a guest of yours because she's a friend
Right.
of mine too. Uh, it might be more like, hey, did you know your taste buds are assholes and the food you eat might be causing you more trouble than it's worth?
Listen.
Hear,
Yeah.
hear
Yeah.
us dive into it
Yeah.
today. So, like, creating that intrigue. And if you do it with the right people that actually care about those topics, you'll start to grow that community. And then the next piece of that is you have to find a way to actually show up in different ways to different people. So if there are ways to actually have live contact, to show up at events or meetups or, anything that's going to give you a stage as a human or just a place to shake hands as a human, those human connections are going to grow way faster than the podcast will, because
Right.
your human discovery is actually a faster generator of traffic than the online discovery is. So
Right. Well, and I really liked what you had to say. I wrote it down, in fact, one or two. Sometimes I think with our minds, we're thinking about the big picture and not understanding the ripple effect, that we only need to affect one person or two people, and that effect will go out and out and out. So I really liked what you said about, messaging in and concentrating on just a few people. Thank
yeah,
you.
well, and I think it's good to know that a podcast isn't a discovery tool. I think
Right.
people mix that up, and I try to share that with people. It's it's a library. It's like it's something where you store the information that supports your reputation, and over time, after years and years, it can become a discovery tool, but only after the work has already been done. It's it's a more of a reputational tool and a warehouse for your thought leadership and for your information, and you have to be the discovery tool, and social media has to be the discovery tool.
Right.
Your human connection has to be the discovery tool. And what's funny is the average podcast, after a lot of hard work, the average podcast still only averages like 200 subscribers, like 200 listens per episode. So 200 people, you've already met that many in your daily life. So your opportunity to generate people to listen is greater in your individual life than it is through the podcast. If that's the number
Yeah.
we're talking about, you probably have at least a few hundred people just on Facebook that you connect with.
Right.
So there's that piece of it, and then realizing that there are other ways to drive interest for your business that aren't the podcast, but the podcast can be a content generation tool that helps support these things. And I'll talk about that in a little bit.
Okay.
So I'll jump into our third one here and wrap us up for this question. So the last one is, before we jump into our other questions, how to grow your business, your podcast with social media, build your list, right? This is one that I think a lot of us avoid. I want to say like, don't think about or don't know, but I think a lot of us know about it, or we vaguely heard this idea, but we don't actually do the hard work to build a actual list of people that are our customers. And we have, I might have some emails, I might have some people on Facebook, I might have a little bit of a group, but I'm not actually creating a list that I have a plan for, that I have a way that people join the list, and I have a way that people, uh, once they're on the list, have a sequenced group of messages from me, and that those messages are all leading them somewhere that drive them to the thing that I ultimately care about, my ultimate goal, whatever I'm actually trying to do. So the list part of this is the biggest opportunity, because once you have people on your list and you start giving them value, you can you own that, and that's a piece of media that you control, that isn't reliant on paying for people to see it, or Facebook cutting it down from all your people to 3 people. Every time you send it, people have the opportunity to see it. So when I say list, I'm talking not just email, but email's the biggest one. I'm talking about your email list, your phone number list that you can send text messages to. I'm talking about your Facebook ID list, in terms of people you can actually send Facebook messages to and direct messages to. or any kind of group. It could be your meetup, something that you do live and you get all those people's information. Anything that you do to gather your people that you can then send direct content to. For some people, it's addresses. It's actually physical addresses, right? And that's a little extreme. That's hard. That takes a lot of trust to get. But the top level is going to be email, and it's still the biggest one that is the most effective top to bottom. So I know it's like email is old, but it's still the powerhouse in terms of marketing. And it's what a lot of podcasters, I think, don't know how to use. So I'm going to bring you back on real quick here. In terms of your list, is this something that you've worked on?
It is. In fact, I currently have almost 900 people on my list, and I gather that through my website. And I'm finding on my list that the text messaging capability actually works better in my genre than the email. I get way more response back and know that people are actually seeing and listening and paying attention to that than I am the email.
Yeah, that makes sense, right? Because it's something that actually your email you can kind of filter through. You've like programmed yourself to skip a couple things if they're written in a way that almost seems like a
Right.
newsletter or something like that. Your phone, it's still right in your face, but the thing that's the counterpoint to that is your phone. You have to be extra careful about the messaging because that's it's like sacred ground for the user. They're like, if I start to feel like it's spam and it's coming too often, even, or I'm not getting what I thought I signed up for, I'm deleting that as quick as possible. So
Right.
it's the most effective, but it's also the most sensitive.
Right.
Email you can kind of get away with more, uh, but both, obviously both,
Right.
Messenger too, if you can use all three of them. So figuring out how to build that list and how to use it and segment it and scrub it and like diving into that, so that the messages that people signed up for are, because sometimes you'll have a list, but the list has all kinds of different people on it that signed up for different reasons. They don't all care about the one thing that you're trying to do. So figuring that out too. Are they all people that are going to support the podcast or not? Like, I don't know.
Right.
But maybe you should have
Yeah.
900 listeners that all came from your email,
Yeah.
but probably not because some of them probably signed up for a different reason, right?
Right. Well, and I appreciate that because, like you said, you own that list. When you get them off of social media, and onto a list that is, that's where the money is.
Yeah, it's where the money is, but it's also the thing that you can control and you can scrub it. And there might be some
Right.
some people on there that really don't need to be on there anymore, but keeping it really clean
Yep.
and knowing like what the things are that they're looking for that you can provide so that people that don't care about some kind of message aren't getting that message is really important. But the building part of this list, you still have an opportunity now to figure out, okay, what are the things I can do to bring new people in? Now that I'm doing some new things, how do I bring new people in that uh, could then join my list and be fresher eyes within the list that are getting new content that I can send down my funnel. And I'm not saying that you should promote like on your podcast, join my list. I'm saying you should come up with these valuable incentives that relate to the content that you put out there. So if it's, I have the 3 most common things in your home that are killing your body or whatever it is, find out today, or find out the 3 ways to feel great tomorrow morning when you wake up, or whatever the thing is. Some people might want to know that.
Right.
And them getting that and it being related to the kind of other things that you're either promoting or the podcast means that you're getting people that actually are perfectly aligned with your message. So you add them to your list.
Right.
And then when you're sending the emails out, part of them are saying, by the way, this week, here's the content that came out. And if you have some kind of product or service, you can promote that.
Right.
And you can put that in there. And that's, for me, it's the list drives the podcast, not the podcast drives the list.
Love it.
And then that was the last thing there, but I'll answer. We have 2 more questions coming up, but before that, I do want to let people know that if you want to ask 3 questions and be on the brandgrowthlive.com show, just go ahead and go to brandonbrands.com/live guest and fill out your form. It's just put your 3 questions in your email and I'll bring you on the show. I'm happy to answer your questions as well. Happy to get more guests on here and have great conversations like this, like we're having with Amy today. So let me bring you back on here. This is fun to like navigate everything. But the question number two is, how do I engage with my podcast listeners when I can't see them? Right. So tell me a little bit about that. Like, what's the feeling there that's inspired the question?
Well, a couple different things. Number one is even when I go into iTunes, total tech, not, I don't know anything, I can't always see all the reviews. And sometimes when you see them, it's like a screen name. So I don't even know who that is to try to connect with them and thank them, number one, for leaving me a comment, and then invite them into more conversation.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the kind of the mystery of podcasting, and one of the limitations is you don't know who your listeners are. You're lucky if they leave a review, and that actually gives you more detail, because some of the times the handle they use, you can guess. You're like, oh, I know who that is. I've seen their email before. Like, I know that these letter combinations are this person. So I'd actually say most of the time, like 50, 60, 70%, you actually know who they are just by looking at what letters they used. If you know your group and you know your people, or they're friends of yours or family or whatever. But that's not the thing that matters, right? Because the reviews are there, they're live. You can thank them literally by screenshotting the reviews and posting them on social media, and that's great. And it actually lets other people know that there's something interesting happening. Like if someone else likes it, they're like, maybe I'll like it too, for that whatever reason they put in that post. So
Right.
you can definitely make it a habit of showing some of those reviews
Okay.
in your social media, and doing it like not just once, but a few weeks later, showing that old one again or whatever it is. But the thing I actually want to dive into more is the mystery podcast listeners, the lurkers, the people that are hiding in the background that don't want you to know who they are. That's a challenge. It's a different challenge than you're going to have when you are on like Facebook, like live like this. Someone joins and watches this. Most of the time I can see their handle. I know who they are. That's not true with podcasts. So what the way I like to think about that is, actually, I try not to worry about the people that are listening to the podcast and like capturing their information, because most of them found the podcast through me. Like they
Right.
already connected with me and then were driven to the podcast, not the other way around. But there are a few people that find you. So I do try to come up with like one lead driver that will take them out of the podcast and give them a reason to want to give me their information. Now, you could just say subscribe, and that's great, but they're not going to give you their information. That's just getting a subscription.
Right.
So what's actually more interesting is saying, either you give them a lead magnet like we were talking about,
Right.
one of those amazing offers, and saying, based on today's, you can almost customize it to your episodes. Hey, this today, like for me,
Right.
today we talked about blogging. Do you want to know how to write a blog? Go to this link, and I got 3 awesome resources for you to get you started today. Download it. Those people that love the episode might also want that resource, and then now you've brought them into your other world. So you have to give them an exchange to get them to want to not be hiding in the background. It might not happen the first time. It might take them the second or third or fourth listen to finally they're like, yeah, okay, I guess I'll do that thing. Or it might not be this offer. It might be the next, the third, or the fourth other thing that you built.
Right.
And I'm an advocate of having multiple lead magnets and things that like are contextually relevant. Or it could be something like, you like this podcast? Go read my article that I wrote for free. No information required. They read the article, and then halfway through the article, there's a little extra thing that's like, want to know about this thing with the article? Go now. Here's the link. So there's levels to this. But at the end of the day, you have to give something to get something, and that something you have to give, it has to be valuable. The other way, if you don't want to build a couple of lead magnets, which you all should be doing, the next thing you could do is, you have a community. You should be encouraging people to say, you're listening. What you might also find value in is knowing that you're not alone, that there are people just like you that are going through the same thing, that are sharing ideas. And as a community, we are working on this thing together. And here's where you find it. Be a part of my community. By the way, that's where I connect most directly. And if you ever want to contact me, you join the community, you have direct access to me for whatever I'm doing. And by the way, there's this awesome lead magnet inside of there. You can combo this stuff if you want.
Right.
But that, you have to give them a reason to leave the podcast. There's no other way to do it.
Okay.
So that's the trick there. And then the last one, we'll bring this last one up real quick, is How do I promote products on the podcast that I believe in, right? And this is true for everyone. A lot of people create podcasts, uh, but most of us have something else that we do, or there's something that's helpful that we want to give people that like supports what we're doing. It's a tool, it's a resource, or it's an actual product that they could use, and that's fine. That they understand that, right? Uh, the thin line is people can tell right away if something is built to sell. You know, if this is the McDonald's podcast, people are like, yeah, I get it. This is McDonald's is trying to sell burgers. I get it. Uh, that's different than having something that you use in your daily life that you seem success with, that you seem value in, and you talking about how that experience has helped you and bringing that through. And if you want more information, you're welcome to join my group and I'll tell you about it, or you're welcome to email me or whatever it is. What I would avoid are things like, and if you act today, you can get these products for $9.99. For the next 3 days, it's 25% off. I think people like just avoid commercials like the plague.
Yeah.
So it has to be more of an authentic resource review for it to work in this format where people aren't expecting that. People do run ads, right? There are like people that once you get large enough, they run ads. I'd say at the beginning, it's too sensitive of an audience. It's too small for it to actually matter that you're running products. I don't think you're going to sell enough because of the podcast for it to work. I think it's more about getting them to trust you, believe in you, to then want to join your community or your email list, that then within that content, they start to see in the middle of all this value and content and community, there are also things that they could buy that help them.
Gotcha.
I think it's a phase two. It can come, but at the beginning, I wouldn't bother because it's not like you're going to get so much traffic to your podcast that you're missing a huge opportunity.
Right.
It's just podcasts are a long game. In a year or two, you might have the subscriber counts you need that volume suddenly matters.
Right.
But at the beginning, it's not going to help. So it's like, why muddy the waters with the awesome content you're producing?
Right. Well, and the last thing, I agree with you. People can smell a sales pitch, a mile away, and that's the last thing I want to do. But I'm also talking to people about removing toxins, and I want to give them choices.
Yeah, and I think resources are very different than like buy this pages, but you could always say all the things I use are on this resource page.
Right.
And whether you buy them from me or not, or I think there's some balance if you share things that also you don't have connections to, that aren't your referrals or your affiliate links, or that you don't get commission on. Just selling the best resources. You can have different categories too, cleaning products and medicines and yada yada. There is value in having that kind of separation to say, I have a great I'm building this resource page. It's getting bigger and bigger, but it has these kinds of things, and you can relate it to the podcast. I know in the podcast today, we talked a lot about the things around your home. I have a full resource section, but one of the categories in that section is house products. And you're welcome to review that, some of the things that we've been talking about. You're welcome to send me your own recommendations of things that really worked for you. I want to hear it. You build it like that. It's a real life resource. For me, I most of the products I talk about, I don't even get a commission on. I just know that they're good tools. They're free tools that a lot of people could get use from, and that's why they look to you, is for that expertise. Right. It's just a matter of the balance, because I think everyone has seen the pitch where it's really they only talk about this one set of products over and over and over and over and over again, and you're like, it's not that you can smell it a mile away. You don't have to. It's right there in your face. But people realize that if that's all you're doing, then you are not in it to provide value. You are literally just selling us, and I think that the balance has to be like 99-1 in terms of the value here.
Right.
But it's resources. People are gonna, if you don't put it there, people are going to ask for it. If you don't give them somewhere to go, they're going to be like, you talked about all these things. You actually left me hanging. I want to know what to use. So it's almost an obligation to share, but in a way that's like, here's where to go to get everything. Or something specific to the episode that really makes sense and is contextual to the episode. Perfect.
Thank you.
So, and obviously none of this stuff is groundbreaking ideas, but I think the conversation, it validates the ideas that most of us like think of naturally. Like, how do you do this? Well, that's how. And then I think that wraps us up. I do want to say, if you guys had watched live today, go ahead and type in hashtag live. So I know you were watching. If you watch replay, that's okay too. I love replays. Every view counts. Go ahead and type in hashtag replay. That works for me as well. And give us some likes just if you've been enjoying the content today. But thank you, Amy. I think that wraps up our conversation for today. Is there anything you want to leave the audience with? Where can they find you? How do they listen to this podcast? Give us all the details.
Sure, absolutely. So the podcast is The Toxin Terminator. You can find me on iTunes under The Toxin Terminator. And my website is just my name, Amy, AIMEE, Carlson.com. So you can get direct links right into the podcast from there as well. I do have a free toxic risk assessment. So if you're wondering, am I even exposed to toxins? Come on in and take that free risk assessment and we'll help you out.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Amy. It's been a pleasure. I'm going to let you go here, but I appreciate you and you bringing your questions to the audience today.
Thank you so much for sharing all your expertise. This is so valuable to us.
Yeah. Well, I'll catch you next time.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. Well, that was our show for today. I know we're at 40 minutes, so I'm going to make the ending here quick. But if you do want to be a part of the show, tell your friends about it or join. It's always at brandgrowthlive.com. That's where you can watch it. And again, if you want to be a guest on the show, go ahead and go to brandonbrands.com/live guest and send me your 3 questions and we'll bring you on. That's it for today. I hope you guys are having a great Wednesday. Brand Growth Live. Appreciate you guys, and we'll catch you guys next week.
Brandon Brands.